To Life After 50, What You Need to Know. I'm Katherine Watson. I'm your host here on Find Houston Senior Care. And I'm really excited today. We've got a great show for you, one that I think is so needed. I'm going to be talking today with Sandi Heintz. She's a certified senior advisor and the owner of Right at Home. And she's going to be talking to us about what do you do if you realize that mom or dad or somebody else that you care about is getting discharged from the hospital or maybe a rehabilitation center, and they're going to come home. What do you need to know? What kind of questions do you need to ask? Where do you need to go? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I've had some amazing guests on this program. If you have joined us before, you've probably seen them. If you haven't, you can go to the live video tab on the Find Houston Senior Care Facebook page. Click on the live video tab and all the videos will be right there for you to watch. Get the information you need so that you make the best choices for somebody that you care about. Mm-hmm. So back to Sandi. She is, as I said, a certified senior advisor and the owner of Right at Home. And Sandi's married to what she calls her biggest supporter, Dan. And she's also the proud mother to 4 amazing children and 2 delightful grandchildren. She has a master's in public administration from the University of Connecticut in healthcare policy. Well, she's in the right field, isn't she? And a bachelor's from the University of Denver. Sandi has some unique experiences. And Sandi, I didn't know some of these things about you. She has worked as a certified nursing assistant, or what a lot of people refer to as a CNA. You've probably heard that term if you've been in the elder care industry, or you've been caring for a parent or somebody else. She also worked with the Harris County Ombudsman program. And if you don't know about that, we'll be doing a program on that down the road. She was also great. A Meals on Wheels driver. And she's just provided a lot of compassion and her skills and her compassion to care for seniors and to serve seniors. She's an advocate. She's an educator. Sandi and I've known Sandi for a number of years, and her number one thing that she wants to do is get out there and educate people and help them learn what they need to know to navigate this elder care world. And it is quite a challenge to navigate sometimes, especially if you're new to it. And let's face it, families were not taught Caregiving 101. It was not in our curriculum at school. We don't know what to do when it happens to us. You always hope and pray that it's not going to happen to your family, but then it does. And so Sandi's here to help guide you and give you some tools and insight and what you need to know. Sandi's favorite quote is from Mother Teresa, and I love this. Not all of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. I just love that. Sandi, thanks for being on the program today. We really are excited to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Sandi, if my mom is getting ready to be discharged from a rehabilitation center, maybe she's been in the hospital, they sent her over to a rehabilitation center, maybe a skilled nursing or some other type of rehab center to get better. And she's been there, but it's getting time, and the social worker is indicating that we're going to be discharging your mother pretty soon. What do I need to know?
Well, I think the key is that you are the biggest advocate. Anybody in the family is the expert of their loved one. And I think people forget that. And so we get overwhelmed with being in that emergency situation, right? So we're talking to a nurse and a physician and a social worker and a discharge planner. And we start losing our ability to advocate on behalf of our loved one and turn to them as being the expert. When the reality is you are the expert. you know what your loved one needs. So that's the first thing you have to do. And then the second thing you have to do is when you take in all that information, you have to start building your plan. You have to look at a few key areas and build a plan for yourself and your loved one so that they can be safe and be as independent as possible.
Okay. That sounds like a good way to get started. So tell me more. How do I actually do that? And who can help us?
So I think the first thing is to kind of look at what are the needs of your loved one. What caused this event that has now caused you to make some changes path forward, right? So what are the full needs? Was it a disease? Was it an acute episode of something, a fall, an accident? Or was it just the progression of life, just an illness that has continued to progress? Or is it a long-term illness that has gotten to a point that needed more help? So you have to look and evaluate what is the current ability of your loved one. So that's the first phase, what they can and can't do. The second phase is, okay, what are our next steps? So if they're leaving a hospital, are they ready to go home? And you talked about it, or do they go to a rehab facility? And that's a whole nother conversation. So by knowing what they are capable of doing helps you decide where they go next. Is home the best place? Is a rehab the best place? Or is there another type of senior community that's the best place for your loved one? And what determines what's the best place? Is it because they need more rehabilitation? Do they need more personalized care? Do they need more nursing care? Or do they just need a safer environment than where they came from? That helps you determine where the next step goes. And then I think the third phase is, what support do you need? You as the caregiver. We tend to forget that the person that's talking about their loved one needs help. You said it exactly right. We don't take a class on caregiving. So do we need financial resources? Do we need physical resources? Do we need training? Do we need to know how to help our loved one transfer from a chair to a bed? That doesn't come just by watching someone do it. You need to know the mechanics of transferring a person. What supplies do you need? We forget about that as well. Do we need a wheelchair? Do we need a different recliner? Do we need pillows? They're simple, but we forget to take those into account when we're moving someone. And then the next thing is, how do we follow up with our loved one? Do we have someone else do it? Are we responsible for making the appointments to the doctors? Are we responsible for finding out the results of the tests? Are we, who's going to manage that next piece of the follow-up so that we don't have another acute event that causes us to be in a hospital?
Sandi, I think you just brought up a really important point. We are becoming the care manager unless we find somebody and hire somebody to take over that piece. And you've got to be able to take on that role. If you're too busy at your job, you may not be able to handle the role of being the care manager. And that's a big role, because that means that you're doing all of the coordination. They may need home health care brought in. They may need other services. If they've had a stroke, they may need some speech therapy. They may need different things. And are you going to be able to manage all of that and manage the doctor's appointments? I know when we first started with this journey in my family, we found out that taking mom to the doctor could easily eat up a half a day, and she may have 3 or 4 doctor's appointments in a week. Well, if you're working full time, that's kind of hard to do sometimes. So you need to know what resources are out there that can help you and how to move forward. But not all families are able to really take on that role as care manager. They may need to hire somebody to help with that, right?
Absolutely. And, there's a new survey. I was going to look at some notes here, but in 2015, the survey came out that there's 40 million people being caregivers out in the world. And that equates to 37 billion hours of time. And it's
Wow.
costing the industry, it's costing people $470 billion.
Mm,
Those are massive numbers, right?
massive.
Massive numbers. And so when you're looking at being a care manager, you have to kind of determine, can I afford to be away from my job? What does that do to me from my productivity? And then also, what does it do to impact my family? So you have to look at what resources are available. Is there someone that can help me manage my family? So is there a geriatric care manager? Is there someone that can take that information and help build the plan for me? So maybe I don't need to go to see every doctor's appointment, but maybe I need to be at that doctor's appointment that's going to talk to me about what happens next in the disease process so that I'm prepared and know what resources I need maybe 2 years down the line. I think that's one of the big keys as being a care manager, is knowing what you can and can't do, and who do you need to call in. Do you have a large family? Do you have a small family? Are you caring from a distance? Or are you caring locally? And those resources change depending on where you are. If you're local and an only child, I mean, you and I were talking about, you have one son and he doesn't live in the area. So if something were to happen, how are you going to have that care managed?
Absolutely.
And just putting that plan in place.
And I think too, Sandy, families need to realize, a lot of times something happens and they end up in hospital or rehab, and we want to believe that dad or mom is going to be okay. We really want to believe that they're just fine. And so that's what we tend to see, when in reality, we really maybe need somebody else to come in and see the situation with different eyes, because our eyes are seeing what we want to see, maybe not what is really happening. Also, the parent may not be forthcoming with the child. They may not tell them everything. Really, right? Yeah, this happens all the time. They want to convince you that they're just fine. My mother-in-law was a good example of that. I was her advocate because I was the one that she would tell the truth to, but she wouldn't tell it to her sons. She wouldn't tell them that she got lost in the neighborhood where she has lived for 50 years, but she told me, because she knew I would do something about that. So families need to realize that the senior, it's important to be very involved, but to have other people also weigh in. And having somebody showing up, if you're going to bring them home, having somebody at that house at least a few days a week to give you feedback on what's going on. When we brought my mother-in-law back over here to Houston, and she moved into an independent living, we hired a home care company, kind of like yours, to come in and oversee her care. And they would call me every morning or text me and tell me she's doing good today. She's having a good day. She's having a not so good day. That gave me the knowledge that I needed to know, okay, do I need to drop by and see her and see what's going on? Or is this a day that I can just stay at work and do what I need to do here?
Yeah. And I think it's important to, you have to look at multiple pieces if you bring someone in. If someone's getting ready to go home, so if it was an acute episode, it might just need that they need some assistance or some extra support from families or someone that you've hired because it was acute and it's short term. But some of the disease process, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, strokes, some of those things might need a longer plan. There might be some things you have to put in to make your home safer, right? And so it might be equipment and tools that you need in place. It might mean bringing in a hospital bed. It might mean modifying a shower so that it's safer again. And that might be a longer transition period, but I think the goal has to be that when you are working with seniors, whether it's a mother or a father, that they're still a parent, they're still an aunt, they're still a sibling, they still deserve and need the respect that they deserve as being that senior in your world. And then the second thing and the third thing is that we want them to be as independent as possible. So when we take them home from a hospital or rehab, what are the tools that are needed to keep them as independent as possible with dignity and respect from all the people that are involved? So look at modifying simple things, modifying a bathroom, modifying a kitchen, so that they can move around independently and don't need so much assistance from a child, when sometimes, that relationship can be a little bit uncomfortable with a child helping a parent. Sometimes it's bringing in the home health that's covered by Medicare, and let them come in and do speech therapy and physical therapy and have the nurse look at the meds and make sure that they're taking them appropriately, so we don't have another issue down the road. And really be your eyes and ears. Exactly what you said is have another person come in and say, what does it take for them to stay independent and safe at home, wherever home is? What does it take? And losing dexterity as we age, maybe a stroke. We're not our fine motor skills. So we need to maybe have some other tools so that we can take our pills without dropping some on the ground. Right? Exactly. Learning how to eat, use different tools to eat. So I think when we put all those pieces together, you build a plan, and then families have less stress by pulling in the resources. But it's not just other healthcare professionals, it's pulling in resources of your church, of your neighbors, friends, and using the rest of your family and not being afraid to ask and see what's out there. There's a lot of free stuff.
There is. There really is. There's a lot of free stuff, and there's a lot of assistance. And I have found that most people want to help; they just don't know how. And there is a website, and I'm trying to think of it. You may know what I'm talking about, where caregivers can go in, set up a plan, and actually list the services that they need to help keep their parent safe in their home. And gosh, I can't think of what the name of that is. I'll think of it later and I'll put it in the comment section for everybody. But it allows people who want to help. You can just say, yes, I would love it if you could help, instead of saying, oh, we're just fine, we're okay, right. Which is what a lot of people tend to do. No, tell people, you know what, I could really, yes, you want to help. Could you go to the grocery store and pick up some things? I'll order it and you can pick it up at the drive-in area. Yeah. Something simple like that. Wow, that just saved me from having to drive over there and drive back. And that took would have taken time out of my day. So little things like that people can do for you. Check in with mom's neighbors. You might be surprised at what the neighbors know that you don't realize. When I talked to some of my mother-in-law's neighbors, I found out that the guy across the street had to move his mailbox because she kept hitting it every time she backed out. So just knowing those kinds of things are going on. And once they knew that we were involved and that we wanted to keep her safe, they stepped up to help. Before, they didn't want to butt in because it wasn't their business. But once we talked to them and asked them to please keep an eye out for her, wow, it was just great. The neighbors really did do that. And I think you just have to ask people.
We have to have a conversation.
We do. We have to have a conversation
with our families. Exactly. Yeah. Our families, and we have to have conversation with their friends and their neighbors, and talk about where do they want to be in this process. So usually an acute event like going to the hospital, you usually then start a conversation. Yeah. And that's where I always say start it before then, but if you want to start it then, just be real with your loved one and say, where do you want to end? Where do you want to live your life? What do you want from me to support you in those decisions? Because when you make decisions, any senior that makes a decision, when they make them wholeheartedly, that keeps them the most independent they can be. It's when other people start coming in and making decisions on their behalf is where they start to get stressed. Exactly. And where families have stress. So if you have a conversation, I want to stay in my home, or I'm willing to downsize to an independent living apartment with assistance, or I'd be okay moving to an assisted living. This is the things I'd like there. Then you're able to build the plan that gives them the respect and the services around that will help them to be independent long term.
Yeah.
Which I love. I absolutely love.
Yeah. That is so key. That is so key, Sandi.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, you have to know, you just have to know what's out there. And I think the other problem is that as caregivers, we forget to care for ourselves. And so as they spend time working with their loved ones, they need to also realize that they have to put boundaries in on their time. Because sometimes it's a spouse caring for their loved one, right? The care receiver is your spouse. And I think that we forget that most caregivers forget to care for their own health. And then what happens is they have an acute event because they haven't taken time to set aside time for themselves.
And then who's caring for your loved one? Who's caring for that person? Yeah. You have to be able to step back. So teaching caregivers how to take that step back. They can still be the advocate. They can still be the one in charge, but they have to be able to let go of some of it. It's so important. Yeah.
And to find resources to fill them. So I remember as a mom of young kids, we give, right? You have to make dinner. You have to take them to their events. You have to get them ready for the bath. You have to get them dressed. You have to get them ready to go to school. We give, and we forget to fill our tank. So we need to find those resources that will help fill our tank so that we're more prepared to be a better caregiver. So support groups. I'm a huge advocate of support groups and counseling to be around others that might be in a similar situation so that you know what's next, especially in these long-term diseases, dealing with someone with dementia and Alzheimer's, dealing with someone with Parkinson's or a stroke that's been debilitating, you need to be around people that are living that because what happens with caregivers, I think they're the only ones. No one knows what I'm going through. I'm the only one because they have no time to find out that there's other people out there.
Right. It's funny you said that because Terry, the caregiver that I interviewed last week, that's exactly what she said. She said, when this happened to me, when mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, dementia, and her mother lives like 800 miles away up in Indiana, she said, I thought I was the only one. She said, and then when I finally started reaching out, I started and there's Sandi, Terry right there talking about that. When I started reaching out, she said, I realized there were a lot of people that were dealing with very similar situations and we're all in this together and we've all got to help and support one another. And that's why I'm so excited about doing this show. So that we can get the resources and the knowledge and the information out there for the family so that they don't have to go through some of the struggles that some of us have gone through. It's wonderful that we live in this internet age, but we also need to know where to go on the internet to find what we need to find because we don't know. And a lot of times families don't even know the questions to be asking. I know when Pat was getting ready to be discharged from rehab, the social worker kept talking about assisted living. And we went and looked at some and we thought, oh gosh, she's really going to kill us. She's not going to like this at all. I had to move her from her home because she lived 300 miles away in Louisiana and there was no family there. So we had made the decision she was going to leave her home. So that was a biggie already. But when I talked to the physical therapist, because they work with her every day, right? So I went down and talked to the physical therapist and the occupational therapist. And I said, what is your opinion? How is she doing? And they both told me that they felt like she could go into an independent living with some home care services on the side. So, and a lot of people don't realize you can even do that, that you can bring somebody into an independent living facility and then have home care services on the side. So the independent living place supplied all of her meals. They took care of all of those things, transportation, all kinds of stuff. And then the home care added the extra support that we needed for her. They were able to, they were able to come in and give her, because she had rheumatoid arthritis. She had the beginnings of dementia. She had some physical and some mental challenges. And we see that so much with so many of our seniors. That we just, they have a lot of both physical and sometimes mental challenges, and dealing with that. And I just put up your website so that people know if you want to get in touch with Sandi, that's where you can do it. It will be in the comment section below. Okay.
And I would just say that when they're getting ready to discharge, so have a notebook. Okay. You need to write down, you need to know who the doctors are. You need to know the medications. You need to know, what extra materials you might need. So you might need a wheelchair. You might need, a hospital bed. And then you also need to know who else is coming into the home. Do you need some help because you work full time? Or are you able to now help mom or dad at home by checking in on them a couple times a week? Or do you need another home care company to come in? Is there home health coming? Is there hospice coming? What do they do? Who did that referral go to? When you are in this process, I know when my daughter was sick as a very young child, I had to write everything down. I asked questions. It's the exact same when you have loved ones that are seniors. You need to write down your questions. So in the middle of the afternoon and you're not there and you're getting ready to go to the hospital or the rehab to talk to the social worker, write down everything. Is there a support group? Who else can I talk to? Google online about that disease so you understand the process, and find out what you need to know. Have the right conversation with your parent. There's a couple tools on our website. There's tools all over the internet about financial questions, their healthcare questions.
Would have somebody put those tools, a link to those tools on the comments. That would help.
Great. It's just so important, whether you're dealing with children or whether you're dealing with your adults and loved ones that are aging, get the information that's important to them. Their financial, their healthcare, their medicines, so that you have a check and balance, so that again, they're independent and safe. Mm-hmm. And if you can go to sleep at night because they're independent and safe, then you're a good caregiver.
And Sandi, we have just a couple of minutes left, but I want to touch on something that I think is very important. The choice is yours. Okay. A lot of times, somebody from the hospital or the rehab facility will maybe try to guide you a certain way to use a certain company. My gut reaction is anytime somebody is trying to steer me in a certain direction, I go the other way. I want to do my own choice. I think it's important. I have to wonder, why are they steering me towards this one company? There's lots out there. I think it's important to do your research, get 3 or 4 recommendations. Reach out to your Facebook friends. They know, they've been there. They're doing it. They're taking care of their mom. They'll give you some referrals. They'll tell you who's good and who's not. So, reach out and get some resources. I would interview 2, 3 tops. Don't do too many because you'll get overwhelmed. And yeah. So, wow, this 30 minutes has gone by so fast. I know we're going to have you back because there's a lot more information to cover. But I really appreciate you being on the show today. Next week, guys, we're going to be talking about Medicare. So if you are Medicare age or you have a parent that is Medicare age and you need to help them with their Medicare, then you're not going to want to miss the show with Stephanie Salcedo. So tune in here every Monday at 11 a.m. and it's always recorded. It's always in the live section. Thanks, Sandi.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.